My boss called me into his office with a disappointed look I'd never seen before. "We've received some concerning reports about your work ethic," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. As I read the fabricated complaints, I realized my closest friend had been systematically destroying me for months. "My name is David Chen, 34 years old, senior marketing analyst at Meridian Digital Solutions in Chicago. For 8 years, Mike Patterson had been more than just a colleague. He was my best friend, my confidant, the guy who stood beside me at my wedding and held my newborn daughter for the first time. We'd climbed the corporate ladder together, shared late-night brainstorming sessions, and built campaigns that saved the company millions. But sitting in Robert Sterling's corner office, reading complaint after complaint about my supposed incompetence, tardiness, and attitude problems, I understood that everything I thought I knew about friendship had been a lie. Mike and I started at Meridian on the same day in 2016, two eager MBA graduates ready to conquer the marketing world. We were assigned adjacent cubicles, and within a week we'd discovered we both loved craft beer, college basketball, and the same obscure sci-fi novels no one else seemed to appreciate. Our friendship developed naturally. We grabbed lunch together daily, worked out at the company gym, and spent weekends watching games at sports bars. When I met Sarah at a conference and started dating seriously, Mike was genuinely happy for me. When he struggled through his messy divorce 2 years later, I was there with a guest room and home-cooked meals. Professionally, we complemented each other perfectly. Mike was the creative visionary, always generating bold ideas and innovative concepts. I was the analytical mind, turning his creativity into measurable strategies and executable plans. Together we created the Local Connect campaign that increased client retention by 34% and saved Meridian from losing their biggest account. We'd joke about becoming the dynamic duo of digital marketing, planning to eventually start our own agency once we'd learned everything Meridian could teach us. Mike would design the campaigns, I'd run the numbers, and we'd split everything 50-50. It seemed like the perfect partnership. When the senior marketing director position opened up last month, neither of us initially applied. The role required someone with both creative vision and analytical expertise. Basically, it needed both of our skill sets combined in one person. We discussed it over beers one Thursday night. "One of us should go for it," Mike said, swirling his IPA thoughtfully. "But which one?" I replied. "We both bring different strengths." "Maybe we don't compete," he suggested. "Maybe we propose a co-leadership structure, split the responsibilities based on our strengths." It seemed brilliant. We spent the weekend crafting a joint proposal, outlining how we'd divide duties and decision-making. Mike would handle creative strategy and client relationships. I'd manage analytics, budget allocation, and team coordination. We presented it to Robert Sterling together the following Monday. "Interesting concept," Sterling said, reviewing our proposal, "but the board is looking for a single point of accountability. One leader, not a committee. You'll need to choose who applies." Mike and I exchanged glances. "Can we have some time to discuss it?" I asked. "Take the week," Sterling agreed. "But understand, whoever doesn't get this position will likely need to wait another 2 years for a similar opportunity." That night, over dinner with Sarah, I weighed the decision carefully. "You built the analytical framework for every major campaign they've run," she pointed out. "The Local Connect success was your strategic planning as much as Mike's creativity." She was right. While Mike generated ideas, I'd been the one ensuring they actually worked, measuring their effectiveness, and refining them for maximum impact. My quarterly reports had guided company strategy for 3 years. "But Mike's been here longer in terms of seniority," I argued, though even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. "We'd started the same day, David," Sarah said gently. "You've earned this. Don't let loyalty cost you your career." Friday morning I knocked on Mike's office door. "I've decided to apply for the position," I said simply. Mike looked up from his computer, and for just a moment I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, maybe disappointment, or something harder to identify. "That's great, man," he said, standing to shake my hand. "You'll do an amazing job. You deserve it." I felt a wave of relief. "Thanks, Mike. That means everything coming from you. Hey, we're friends first, colleagues second, right?" He grinned, but somehow it didn't reach his eyes. "Win or lose, nothing changes between us." I should have paid attention to that moment, should have noticed how his smile seemed forced, how his congratulations felt scripted. Should have realized that 8 years of friendship might not matter when a 6-figure promotion was at stake. Instead, I walked away feeling grateful for having such a supportive friend. The application process was extensive. Sterling wanted a comprehensive marketing strategy for the next fiscal year, including budget proposals, team restructuring plans, and at least 3 major campaign concepts with projected ROI calculation. I threw myself into the work with an intensity that surprised even me. This wasn't just about the money or the title. It was about proving I could lead, that my analytical approach could drive creative excellence rather than stifle it. I stayed late every night for 2 weeks, building financial models, researching market trends, and developing what I believed was the most comprehensive marketing strategy Meridian had ever seen. My proposal included a revolutionary client retention program, a data-driven approach to campaign optimization, and a restructured team hierarchy that would increase efficiency by an estimated Mike seemed genuinely interested in my program. He'd stop by my office each evening as I worked, bringing coffee and asking about my ideas. I shared everything freely. We were friends, after all, and he wasn't competing for the position. "That retention algorithm is brilliant," he said one night, reviewing my spreadsheet. "The way you've correlated client satisfaction metrics with campaign performance data, I never would have thought of that approach." "Thanks," I replied, feeling validated. "It's all about finding the patterns others miss." "Can you walk me through the calculation methodology?" he asked, pulling up a chair. "I'm curious how you weighted the different variables." I spent an hour explaining my entire analytical framework, showing him the formulas I'd developed and the historical data patterns I'd identified. Mike asked thoughtful questions, took careful notes, and seemed genuinely impressed by the complexity of the system. "You're going to crush this presentation," he said as he left that night. "Sterling's going to be blown away." 2 weeks later, I submitted my proposal, 67 pages of strategic analysis, financial projections, and innovative campaign concepts. I'd included mock-ups, timeline charts, and detailed implementation schedules. It represented the best work of my career. Mike submitted his application the same day, though he'd been much more secretive about his approach. "Different styles," he explained when I asked about his strategy. "You're the numbers guy, I'm more of a big-picture vision. My proposal focuses on creative innovation rather than analytical depth." The interviews were scheduled for the following week. Sterling would meet with each candidate individually, then make his decision. I felt confident walking into that interview. My presentation was polished, my answers were well prepared, and my proposal spoke for itself. Sterling asked probing questions about implementation challenges, budget constraints, and team management, but I'd anticipated every concern. "Impressive work, David," he said as I concluded my presentation. "Your analytical approach is exactly what this department needs. The retention algorithm alone could revolutionize how we approach client relationships." I left the interview feeling optimistic. Sarah noticed my good mood immediately. "How did it go?" she asked. "I think I nailed it," I replied. Sterling seemed really impressed with the retention program. That weekend, Mike and I met for our usual Saturday basketball game. He seemed a bit distant, but I attributed it to interview nerves. "How did your presentation go?" I asked, as we shot around. "Good, I think," he replied vaguely. Sterling seemed interested in my ideas. "What was your main focus?" Mike hesitated. "Client retention mostly. Building stronger relationships through personalized approaches." Something about his answer struck me as odd, but I didn't pursue it. We were friends competing for the same position. Some awkwardness was natural. Monday morning brought the announcement. Sterling sent a company-wide email at 9:15 a.m. "Please join me in congratulating Mike Patterson on his promotion to Senior Marketing Director. Mike will be transitioning into his new role immediately." I stared at my computer screen, reading the message 3 times before it sank in. Mike had gotten the promotion. My promotion. The position I'd worked 60-hour weeks to earn. The rational part of my brain tried to process this professionally. Maybe Mike's creative approach had impressed Sterling more than my analytical strategy. Maybe the board wanted a different leadership style. Maybe my presentation hadn't been as strong as I'd thought. But the emotional part of my brain was reeling. 8 years of friendship, and Mike couldn't even give me a heads up that he'd gotten the job. I'd had to learn about it through a company-wide email like everyone else. I walked to Mike's office to congratulate him despite the disappointment churning in my stomach. He was packing up his things, preparing to move to the corner office that had almost been mine. "Congratulations," I said, extending my hand. "You earned it." Mike looked up, and again I saw that strange flicker in his eyes. Not guilt exactly, but something I couldn't identify. "Thanks, David. That means a lot coming from you." "Your retention program must have really impressed Sterling," I said, fishing for information. Mike's face went slightly pale. "Yeah, something like that." The conversation felt stilted, unnatural. After 8 years of easy friendship, we were suddenly struggling to find words. I attributed it to the awkwardness of the situation, and left him to his packing. Over the next few days I threw myself back into my regular work, trying to shake off the disappointment. Sarah was supportive, but encouraged me to ask Sterling for feedback on my proposal. "Understanding why you didn't get it will help you improve for next time," she pointed out. Thursday afternoon I knocked on Sterling's door. He invited me in with his usual professional warmth. "I wanted to thank you for considering me for the promotion," I began, "and to ask if you had any feedback on my proposal." Sterling leaned back in his chair, studying me carefully. "Your proposal was excellent, David. Truly impressive analytical work." "Then why?" I started, then stopped myself. "I'm sorry, that was inappropriate." "No, it's a fair question," Sterling said. "The decision ultimately came down to innovation and leadership potential. Mike presented some groundbreaking ideas about client retention that frankly surprised me." My stomach dropped. Client retention, his algorithm for correlating satisfaction metrics with campaign performance. I've never seen anything like it. The mathematical sophistication combined with practical application was extraordinary. The words hit me like a physical blow. Mike's algorithm for correlating satisfaction metrics with campaign performance was my algorithm. The one I'd spent 2 weeks developing. The one I'd walked him through step by step. "Could you describe the algorithm in more detail?" I managed to ask, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Well, I'm not the numbers expert you are," Sterling said with a laugh. But essentially he'd weighted different client satisfaction variables against campaign performance data to create predictive models for retention probability. Brilliant stuff. The work I'd shared with my best friend over coffee and late-night conversations, believing we were just discussing ideas between colleagues. I sat there nodding and smiling while Sterling described my own work being attributed to Mike, my own innovation being used to justify giving him my promotion. The betrayal was so complete, so thoroughly executed, that I almost admired its precision. "I should get back to work," I said eventually, standing on unsteady legs. "David," Sterling called as I reached the door. "I hope you know how valuable you are to this team. There will be other opportunities." I nodded and left his office, walking in a daze back to my cubicle. My closest friend hadn't just beaten me for a promotion. He'd stolen my work to do it. 8 years of friendship, trust, and shared ambitions, and Mike had used our relationship to plagiarize the very ideas that cost me the job. The worst part was how perfectly he'd played it. By encouraging my openness, asking thoughtful questions, and positioning himself as a supportive friend, he'd gained access to my strategic thinking while keeping his own plans secret. I'd handed him the weapons he'd used against me. I didn't confront Mike immediately. Part of me still hoped there was some explanation, some misunderstanding that would preserve our friendship. Maybe he'd developed similar ideas independently. Maybe Sterling had confused the details. But deep down I knew the truth. The algorithm Sterling had described wasn't just similar to mine. It was mine down to the specific variable weightings and calculation methodology I'd spent weeks perfecting. Friday afternoon I stayed late at the office, ostensibly to catch up on work but really to think through what had happened. The building was nearly empty by 7 p.m. when I walked past Mike's new corner office and saw him working at his computer. I knocked on his door frame. "Burning the midnight oil in your new role?" He looked up, startled. "David. Yeah, just getting familiar with the director-level responsibilities. Mind if I come in?" "Of course." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. The same desk that had almost been mine. I sat down and studied my former best friend. "Sterling mentioned your retention algorithm impressed him." Mike's eyes flickered. "Yeah, I'd been working on some ideas about client satisfaction metrics." "Really?" "Because it sounded a lot like the system I showed you a few weeks ago." The silence stretched between us. Mike's face went through several expressions: surprise, guilt, defiance, and finally something harder. "David," he said carefully, "I think you're reading too much into casual conversations we had. We both work in the same field, dealing with similar challenges. Parallel thinking isn't unusual." "Parallel thinking," I repeated the phrase slowly. "Is that what you call it when you use my specific formulas and variable weighting?" Mike leaned back in his chair and suddenly his expression changed completely. The guilt disappeared, replaced by something colder. "Look," he said, "ideas belong to whoever can execute them best. You're a great analyst, David, but you're not leadership material. Sterling needed someone who could turn concepts into reality." "My concepts? Concepts that would have sat in your drawer forever while you second-guessed every detail." Mike shot back. "I took your theoretical work and made it practical. That's what leaders do." I stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time in 8 years. This wasn't my friend who'd made a mistake or gotten caught up in ambition. This was someone who'd systematically planned to steal my work and justify it as leadership. 8 years, I said quietly. 8 years of friendship. And this is who you really are. Mike's expression softened slightly, as if he realized he'd revealed too much. "David, I never meant for it to happen this way, but the opportunity was there and I had to take it. You understand, right? It's just business." I stood up slowly. "No, Mike. Friendship isn't business. Trust isn't business. What you did, that's theft. Prove it," he said, the cold expression returning. "Sterling made his decision based on my presentation and my interview. If you want to accuse me of something, you better have evidence." I walked to the door, then turned back. "You're right about one thing. I'm not leadership material. I'm too trusting, too willing to believe the best in people. But you made one mistake, Mike." "What's that?" "You assumed I didn't document everything." That weekend I sat in my home office with Sarah, laying out 8 years of friendship and betrayal in chronological order. I'd always been meticulous about record keeping. It was part of my analytical nature, but I'd never imagined I'd need to build a case against my best friend. I had emails dating back months, showing the development of my retention algorithm, draft documents with timestamps proving when I'd created each component, version histories showing the evolution of my idea, even chat logs from our work messaging system where I'd shared preliminary findings and asked for Mike's input. "This is pretty damning," Sarah said, reviewing the timeline. "You can prove you developed everything he claimed as his own work. But is it enough?" I asked. "Mike's right. Sterling made his decision based on their interview and presentation. Even if I can prove Mike stole my ideas, would it change anything?" Sarah looked up from the documents. "You're not just fighting for a promotion anymore, David. You're fighting for your professional reputation. If word gets out that your work was used to beat you for a job, your credibility is shot." She was right. In our industry, reputation was everything. If people believed I'd lost a promotion to my own ideas, I'd become a cautionary tale about protecting intellectual property. "What do you want to do?" Sarah asked. I thought about it carefully. The easy path would be to let it go, to chalk it up to a learning experience and move on. Mike was already in the position, and unseating him would create massive drama within the company. But the more I considered it, the angrier I became, not just at Mike, but at myself for being so naive. How many other colleagues had he manipulated over the years? How many other friendships had he weaponized for professional gain? I want justice, I said finally. Not revenge, justice. I want the truth to come out. That could destroy your friendship permanently. I looked at the evidence spread across my desk, 8 years of trust betrayed for a promotion, and a corner office. What friendship? I replied. I spent Sunday developing my strategy. Direct confrontation with Sterling would likely backfire. Mike was already in the position, and admitting they'd made a mistake would embarrass leadership. I needed to let the truth emerge naturally, in a way that would force the company to address the situation. Monday morning I requested a meeting with Jennifer Walsh, our HR director. I'd worked with Jennifer on several projects over the years, and trusted her to handle sensitive situations professionally. I need to report a concern about intellectual property theft, I told her as we sat in her office. Jennifer's expression became immediately serious. That's a significant allegation, David. Can you walk me through the details? I presented my documentation methodically, showing the timeline of my algorithm development, the conversations where I'd shared my work with Mike, and the specific details Sterling had mentioned about Mike's innovation. This is troubling, Jennifer said after reviewing everything. But I need to ask, why didn't you raise this concern immediately after the promotion was announced? Because I wanted to be absolutely certain, I replied, and because I hoped there was some explanation that would preserve our friendship. And now I realize that preserving my professional integrity is more important than protecting someone who used our friendship to steal from me. Jennifer made careful notes throughout our conversation. I'll need to investigate this thoroughly, she said. That means interviewing other team members, reviewing Mike's original proposal, and potentially involving our legal department if intellectual property theft is confirmed. I understand. David, I need to warn you, this could get very complicated. If your allegations are substantiated, it won't just affect Mike. It could reflect poorly on Sterling's decision-making and create significant upheaval in the department. I understand that too, I said, but the alternative is allowing theft to be rewarded and setting a precedent that betraying colleagues' trust is acceptable. Jennifer nodded slowly. Give me a week to review everything and conduct preliminary interviews. I'll get back to you with next steps. As I left her office, I felt simultaneously relieved and terrified. I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Win or lose, my relationship with Mike was finished, and my standing within the company would never be the same. The investigation began quietly. Jennifer interviewed team members individually, asking about project collaboration patterns and intellectual property sharing. She reviewed Mike's original proposal and compared it to my documented work history. Mike seemed oblivious to what was happening. He stopped by my cubicle Tuesday afternoon, acting as if our Friday conversation had never occurred. Hey, wanna grab lunch? He asked with forced casualness. I'm pretty busy, I replied without looking up from my computer. Come on, David. I know things are weird between us right now, but we're still friends. Don't let work stuff ruin 8 years of friendship. I finally looked at him. Work stuff? Is that what you call stealing my intellectual property? Mike glanced around nervously, then lowered his voice. You're being dramatic. Ideas evolve through collaboration. That's how innovation works. Collaboration involves credit and consent, Mike. What you did was theft. His expression hardened. Careful, David. Accusations like that could be considered defamatory. Only if they're false. Mike stared at me for a long moment, then walked away without another word. Wednesday brought more interviews. Jennifer spoke with other team members about our typical working relationship, our collaboration patterns, and whether they'd observed any concerning behavior. Thursday, Jennifer called me back to her office. I've completed my preliminary investigation, she said, and I've found substantial evidence supporting your allegations. My heart pounded. What kind of evidence? Multiple team members confirmed that you'd been working on client retention algorithms for weeks before Mike's promotion. Several remember you sharing specific details about correlation methodologies and variable weighting systems. She opened a file on her desk. More importantly, I've reviewed Mike's original proposal. It contains your exact formulas, presented without attribution or acknowledgement of your contribution. So what happens now? Jennifer's expression was grave. This is a serious violation of our intellectual property policies and our code of conduct regarding colleague relationships. I'm recommending that Mike's promotion be reviewed by the executive committee. Friday afternoon, Sterling called an emergency meeting with Mike, myself, and Jennifer present. Mike looked confused and slightly annoyed, as if he couldn't understand why his time was being wasted on administrative matters. We're here to address concerns about intellectual property attribution in the recent promotion decision. Sterling began, his voice carefully neutral. Mike's confusion instantly transformed into alarm. His eyes darted between Jennifer and me, and I saw the moment he realized the scope of what was happening. I'm not sure what you mean, he said carefully. Jennifer opened her file. Mike, your promotion proposal contained detailed analytical work that appears to have been developed by David. Can you explain how you arrived at these specific methodologies? We collaborated on various ideas over the months. Mike stammered. It's hard to say where any specific concept originated. Actually, it's not that hard, I said, speaking for the first time. I have documentation showing the entire development process of every algorithm you claimed as your own work. Sterling leaned forward. Mike, I specifically asked about the mathematical sophistication of your retention algorithm during our interview. You took full credit for developing those correlation models. Mike's face was pale now. I may have misspoken about the specific development process, but the ideas were refined through our team discussions. Stop, I interrupted. Just stop lying. You didn't misspeak. You didn't refine team ideas, and we both know this wasn't collaboration. You systematically stole my work and used it to steal my promotion. The room fell silent. Mike looked around desperately, perhaps hoping someone would offer him an escape route. I think, Sterling said slowly, we need to review this situation very carefully. The executive committee meeting took place the following Monday. I wasn't present, but Jennifer briefed me on the outcome Tuesday morning. Mike's promotion has been rescinded, she announced. The committee found clear evidence of intellectual property misappropriation and misrepresentation during the interview process. I felt a complex mix of vindication and sadness. What happens to Mike? He's been placed on probation and demoted to his previous position. He'll also be required to complete ethics training and issue a formal apology to you. And the director position, Jennifer smiled slightly. Sterling recommended that it be offered to the person who actually developed the innovative retention algorithms that impressed the committee. 2 days later, I was sitting in Sterling's office, signing the paperwork for my promotion to senior marketing director. The corner office that had briefly been Mike's was now officially mine. I owe you an apology, Sterling said as I finished reviewing the contract. I should have done more due diligence during the interview process. You trusted someone to be honest about their work, I replied. That's not a character flaw. Still, this situation has reminded me that verification is always necessary, especially when we think we know someone well. As I packed up my cubicle and prepared to move into the corner office, I reflected on what I'd learned about friendship, trust, and professional integrity. Mike had taught me that some people view relationships as resources to be exploited rather than bonds to be honored. But he'd also taught me something more important, that standing up for truth, even when it's difficult, is always worth it. Mike cleaned out his temporary corner office that same day. As he carried his boxes past my new office, he stopped and looked in. I hope you're happy, he said bitterly. I looked up from my computer. I'm not happy about any of this, Mike. I'm just glad the truth came out. The truth? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. The truth is that you destroyed 8 years of friendship over a job. No, I said quietly. You destroyed 8 years of friendship by stealing from me. I just made sure there were consequences. Mike stared at me for a long moment, then walked away. It was the last conversation we ever had. 6 months later, I was thriving in my new role. The retention program I'd developed had exceeded all projections, increasing client satisfaction by 31% and reducing churn by nearly 40%. The company's most successful quarter on record was built on the foundation of work I'd done in my cubicle, fueled by late-night inspiration and the belief that innovation could drive meaningful results. Mike had transferred to another department, where he worked quietly and kept his head down. We passed in hallways occasionally, but never spoke. I felt no satisfaction in his diminished circumstances, only regret that someone I'd trusted so completely had chosen ambition over integrity. Sarah noticed the change in me. "You seem more confident," she said one evening as we walked through our neighborhood. "I learned something important," I replied. "Being trustworthy doesn't mean being naive. I can maintain my integrity while protecting my interests." And the friendship with Mike, I thought about it carefully. I mourned that friendship like a death, because in a way that's what it was. The person I thought I knew for 8 years never really existed. The real Mike was someone who viewed our relationship as a strategic advantage rather than a genuine connection. Do you regret exposing him? I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret standing up for myself. That weekend I received an unexpected email from a colleague at our rival company. "Heard about what happened with your promotion situation. Mike Patterson applied for a position here and listed you as a reference. Thought you should know." I stared at the email for a long time, considering my options. I could give Mike a neutral reference, essentially helping him move on from the consequences of his action. Or I could tell the truth about why our working relationship had ended. I picked up the phone and called the hiring manager. "I need to tell you about Mike Patterson's approach to intellectual property and colleague relationships," I said when she answered. "Some people might call that vindictive. I called it protecting future victims. Because the thing about betrayal is that it's rarely a one-time occurrence. People who steal from friends don't suddenly develop ethics when they change companies. They just find new friends to exploit." Mike had taught me that trust should be earned, not given freely. But he'd also taught me that protecting others from predatory behavior isn't revenge, it's responsibility. The corner office had been nice, and the promotion had validated my professional work. But the real victory was learning that integrity, even when it costs friendships and creates conflict, always leads to a clearer conscience and a stronger sense of self. Some prices are worth paying. Standing up to betrayal is one of them.